Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another shift show. So, gotta watch how we say that. It's a Friday, beautiful out here, and I've got Evan Knox as my guest today from Caffeine Marketing. Hey, welcome, Evan.
So, hey, thanks for having me, Ira.
So, you're on the East Coast. What's the weather looking like down in Atlanta?
Well, it's been super rainy the past couple of weeks, but it's great outside right now. We're probably going to go on a walk later today, hang out with family. Okay. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, we got a beautiful weekend coming up, so that'll be fun for Flag Day celebration, and probably a lot of protesters around the country, at least on the East Coast.
Yeah, there's definitely been a ton.
So. Yeah, for sure. And but we're going to be talking about maybe protesting the employment brand challenge. You have a company called Caffeine Marketing. Just give everybody a heads up here. And we met over LinkedIn a couple months ago, couple weeks ago, and looks like the conversation resonated. And your specialty is marketing, but we'll get to that. You also have a great story behind you. You're one of those darn millennials that everybody talks about.
That's the worst.
That definitely doesn't fit the mold, for sure. Not sleeping in not living in your parents' basement. Haven't been got a successful business and a great kind of a social. You do a lot of things also with personally, for I believe a few missions or working with the community and
totally.
And so forth. So yeah, very very different than that stereotypical. Hey, what's wrong with these millennials, right? Yeah, it must be Georgia. We talked. There's another marketing. She's actually in marketing too.
Oh, really?
Just interviewed her a few weeks ago, and she was down. I believe she's in the Atlanta area, but I know she's in Georgia. And again, she calls herself the not so millennial.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I always felt like, I don't know, whenever I hear those terms or those categories, like it just never resonates. So when people ask, "Oh, what do millennials think right now?" And I'm like, I have no idea, to be real with you. So
hey, you don't know what 80 million people are thinking? So.
Yeah, I can't personally speak on behalf of all of them, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. We just think again. So as a baby boomer, anyway. But I'm a recovering millennial basher. So
okay,
you're in safe. This is a safe zone.
Okay, that's a good step right here. It's like rehab. It's good.
Yeah, it's good. So hey, I just wanted to make a couple announcements. I threw a couple slides. We've got some upcoming events before we dive in here and before we kind of get wrapped up in it. I'm doing a lot of webinars. This is sort of one of them. But I've got next week or 2 weeks. We're continuing the series on the future of employment, future of employability. And Dr. Ed Gordon, we had a huge turnout last time. So for anybody who is interested, let me see if I can quickly find the link here. I don't want to waste too much time doing this, but you can go to the link right down here. I'll try to put that in the comments, but you can also go up to my feeds. If you're following me on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, you'll be seeing a lot of this. So that's another one. And we got a second one coming up tomorrow, next Thursday. I'm actually sponsoring one. If we can switch that. And this is an interesting one because it's talking about the COVID impact on job listings. Not so much. We all know that it's obviously with 44 million people unemployed, it obviously has an effect on jobs, and many companies aren't open, so they're not, their job listings have stopped. But more importantly, is being able to use there's a technology that's out there to be able to use the data to be able to track job listings and then use them to your recruiting advantage. So I know, Evan, you talk a lot about metrics and so forth, the importance of that. And we're going to be talking about that. And let me see if I can quickly find the link, and then we'll go back to what we were supposed to be talking about today. There we go. You can see it's scrolling around along the bottom. So those are 2 webinars that are coming up, and you can just go to bit.ly/JobSync618. So let me shut all this down. We're going to bring back Evan here. That's one of the problems. There's too many dashboards here. So, and talking about confusing, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about. Don't be so confusing.
Yeah.
All right. So you sent out, you had a webinar that's evergreen. So we can actually post the link in here while you're doing some conversation. I can direct people to that so they can watch it. But one of the things that you talked about, or one of the things that I talk a lot about, is that how companies need to improve their employment brand. Because it used to be the pathway to get a job was that an employer, I'm going to really show my age. An employer would say, "Hey, we have a job opening," and on Friday they would post. They would make sure you actually had to call days ahead. So you would have to have your job opening in by Wednesday to be in for the weekend to make sure it's in the Sunday newspaper, because that was the big day.
I knew you were going to say newspaper.
on the classified ads. If somebody quit, if somebody terminated on Thursday or Friday, you were like out of luck, because it couldn't begin for 10 days. I mean, you wouldn't be in the Sunday newspaper for another 10 days. Now, you could be on the weekdays, but the circulations were always a lot less. So what would happen is you'd have to call by noon or 2 on Wednesdays. You'd post the ad, and then finally, like, they'd give you the special rate, and then maybe they do it for 10 days, and then it would start on Friday or Saturday, and then by Monday, people would be dropping off paper applications. They'd be calling, they'd be sending them by mail, and a couple days later. So the whole process was it was less complicated before, because that was how it was done, other than posting a sign on the front door. Obviously that's changed a lot, but in the background is the way people got jobs is they either stopped by the business and left and dropped off their application. And you used to, given really my age, Xerox, but you used to copy them. You'd have 50.
I've seen a fax machines before. I'm not that young.
I'm not talking fax machine. I'm talking about the smelly Xerox.
Okay.
Literally, they used to roll the thing, and the ink was probably, it was certainly lethal if you smelled too much of it. But yeah, it was literally, it was bizarre. But basically, whatever way you did it, or you retyped your your resume out multiple times, and you would drop them off, or you mailed it, or you faxed it, and then email came out. But that was how you got it to the business, and vice versa. But it wasn't really important. People wanted a job. They didn't necessarily care about the business. They didn't care about the brand. They didn't care about the purpose of the business. They didn't care what the values of the business were. They basically just showed up, knocked at the front door, and hey, I'm here. And businesses acted like, hey, we're going to do you a favor.
Totally.
We're going to pay you for the job. And that was the, you have you basically, we're going to give you we are going to give you an opportunity to earn money. And that stuck for a while. What's happened over the last, I'm going to say 10 years, but mostly over the last 3 or 4 years prior to the pandemic, and even more important now, is that the whole generation, partly your generation, but also baby boomers and Gen X, decided that they want to work for companies that had a purpose. It wasn't just about profit, that they had a role in the community, that they had certain values, that they were concerned about the world, the environment, but there was a mission, there was a purpose behind there. And the pandemic really made that come true. The challenge with that is companies still have not basically promoted why would it be important to work for you. It's still, they offer jobs, because what they do is, we have a job opening. We're going to copy and paste their job description. We're going to put it up on Indeed. And used to get 50 people apply. Now you get 1,300 people apply. And I'm not making that up. That's actually a client of mine. That's what happened. They were saying, hey, we can't get enough applications. Now it's like, hey, what do we do with 1,300 applications? We're just a small business. How do we process them? But people are still, some people are looking for a paycheck, but good people.
Yep.
I mean, I don't mean good as in good and evil, but people that have the talent that you want still have choices, and they're looking for a company. So where I'm leading to is that basically your focus is helping companies tell their story. It's not create a brand, but it's tell their story. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I might change that a little bit. So I might say, we help companies create a story that their customers or employees want to engage in, because everybody's very, I mean, I can't tell you how many times somebody's come to Caffeine and said, hey, we really need to tell our story. We need to tell more people our story. But in reality, people don't really care about your story. They want to be caught up into a story. And often if we can message a company's marketing or their job posting, whatever that is, and we're actually trying to tell a story and make the potential hire or the customer the hero of the story, and not make the brand the hero per se.
And that's important. So I'd like you to walk through. I know you use a process. I think it's called Story Brand.
Yeah.
But you use a process. But one of the things in there, which and when I saw that webinar the other day, and I've watched it several times just because and I've used it several times, just that model, is that going back to what I said earlier, businesses put themselves out as the hero. Yeah. We're going to rescue you. We're going to come in and give you a job and give you money and a place to go to work. You're saying that's not the message, that the business shouldn't come across as the hero, but I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. You were talking a few minutes ago about that employee that you really want. And from my experience in hiring and also working on teams before having my own company, you can have a really talented person, but they're not the person that you want to hire. You want to hire somebody with really great, like, emotional intelligence. I feel like that's a good characteristic of a good hire. And that person, if they are emotionally intelligent and they are self-aware, they're going to be in touch with that reality inside themselves that says, I want to work for a company that's bigger than just me. I don't want to just show up to a job and check a box and be miserable for most of my life. I want to be a part of something bigger than myself. And I think those are the people that you really want to target. And the way that you do that and you communicate to them in the way that they want to actually work for you is by making them the hero. And I think there's probably another distinction besides what you just said. I think it's probably the same, similar mindset. But one is, hey, we're giving you a job. You should be thankful. But there's another one that says, we're amazing. Like, we're so awesome. Here's how all the reasons we're awesome. Here's all the awards that we won. Here's how many years we've been in business. Here's our story, all that stuff. And that really is not that relevant. I think that is just one out of 7 things to 8 things you need to talk about. You do need to know that it's a great workplace, but you don't need to brag on yourself, if that makes sense.
Right, sure. So you go to a lot of websites, and again, when people talk about videos and say, hey, you need a video. So what they do is they bring in all the videographers and do this corporate video, and the CEO gives the message, and they talk about the history, and we've been around, and they show a couple images of people working, but it's all about the company. It's not about what's in it for me. An employee, if I come there, how can I share in the riches, or how can I become more fulfilled, or how will you help me fulfill my mission? How will you help me give back to the community, or how will you, whatever it might be. And I think that's the thing.
You're very much right. I could think of a couple examples, right? If you come into this with just the details about the job posting, let's say you put the average salary range or whatever, all the things they're responsible for, and you don't talk about what's in it for them, they're not going to care, because ultimately our brains are wired to care about what's going to help us survive and thrive. And if you don't hit those 2 things, then people are going to tune you out, and they're basically going to be just skimming through your job posting. They're not going to pay attention. They're not actually going to read all the words. Another thing, this is kind of maybe a little tactical here, but if your job posting is super long, and you've got on your about page or your careers page, there's a ton of text on there, most likely, I'll speak for millennials here. We won't read it. I'll speak
for a baby boomer here. I won't read it.
Yeah, right.
Pretty boring.
What it's happening though is our brains are saying it's taking too many calories to process the information on this page, so I'm out. Like, it just turns off, not doing it. And so we have to be really intentional about the words that we use in order to actually move people towards action. And the less words that you can say, the better off you're going to be.
And pictures are worth 1,000 words, right?
And happy smiling people.
Yeah, and I can't remember the statistic, but I think it's a video is worth like 160. Like a 1-minute video is worth like 160,000 words. That you would have to write. Yeah, it's a huge number. So where does somebody start? So company says, I get it. We're trying to, you know, I'm in HR, I'm a recruiter. I'm trying to convince my hiring managers, my boss, that we need to tell not our story, but we need to tell a story,
a better story
with the job seeker, right?
Yeah.
So where do you start?
My suggestion, you mentioned the keynote or the webinar that I delivered. That's all that and more. You can go onto my website. It's probably the best place. There's also a free guide on there, how to build a sales funnel. So that's the best way. But also, this all comes directly from a company called StoryBrand, and they're the ones who actually teach that framework. And that 7-part framework basically teaches you how to engage customers, or in the hiring space, potential hires, into a story and not make it about yourself. But the first thing is to define the customer wants. Who is your hire? Is it a tech person? Are they IT? Who is the kind of, we call it like not a psychograph, but like basically who's this persona that you're trying to hire? And then what is it they want? Do they want a safe workspace? Do they want a happy, healthy culture? Do they want to not work a ton of hours? Do they want to work from home? Define what it is they want. And the best thing from there is to then, what's the problem? So can you identify a problem that's getting in the way of them getting what they want? And you don't want to villainize other companies. So you don't want to be like, other companies will do this, but you do want to say, hey, you really you need flexibility in your life. If that's something that a company can offer, hey, you need flexibility to spend time with your family while also bringing value to the world. This is, we're the place for you. We can help you solve that problem. So if you can identify the want and then the problem, that's a great starting point for them to see you as the guide. Because once you've identified their problem, they're going to expect you to be able to solve that.
Right. So you go through a couple steps, and one is, and we sort of jumped over this. We sort of just dove into it. But you have a phrase called "confuse, you'll lose."
Yeah. Well, that I would say, I think a guy named Donald Miller came up with that, but if he didn't, it's probably somebody else. Okay. But it's this idea that if you're confusing in the words that you use, you're going to lose sales, and you're going to lose potential hires and employees. Because when you start doing that, like we talked about with the brain's saying, hey, it takes too many calories to understand what you're saying. I'm out.
And I just want to put this up here. I know I showed you for the first time. This is a model I use for candidate experience. And we talk about the 4 horsemen of the bad candidate experience. I want to give credit to Debbie Levitt, a friend of mine who actually initially coined this as the 4 horsemen of bad UX, which is user experience. And we talk a lot about going through the steps of creating a better candidate experience, and certainly being mobile ready, having a mobile responsive website, having a lot of imaging. Part of that is telling the story, but we're working more on the technical side. But on this, we talk about it can't be frustrating. You can't have, somebody tries to apply for the job, and that they have to log in several times and give a lot of unnecessary information. The confusing part is how do I even apply? I mean, a lot of people say, hey, I heard that Caffeine Marketing is hiring, and I go to your website and I can't even find how to apply for the job. That's just one of them. And then, you have the disappointment, it takes too long. I'm sitting there and waiting to load. A lot of that has to do with the response after that, hey, I submitted an application. I haven't heard from anybody in 6 weeks. So they go into the HR black hole. And then finally, there's distractions. So going back to, what we were talking about, and again, this fits into that confusion part, is that a lot of company career sites, the company webpage that is focused on the job, when you go there, there's a whole panel on the side with things about sales. Or if you sign up for our mailing list, or here's our we're having a sale this week. They're there to apply for a job, and then there's all these distractions on the other columns. There's oftentimes just colors and designs are crazy distractions. But the whole process is what you're talking about. I mean, it basically is just confusing to the person. There's all this information to digest, as opposed to creating that landing page. Hey, I got them there. They were interested in applying for the job.
Yeah.
Get them to apply to the job.
There's I'm sure you're familiar with this, but a lot of the recruiters that I've talked to, they see jobs, not only like the titles and the actual words that describe the job, most marketing recruiter types, they see that also as an SEO opportunity. So a search engine opportunity for you to show up in a search. You have to play a balance game. When there's a lot of websites, I've got friends that run marketing agencies that their website is all text. I mean, it's just like top to bottom text. But if you search marketing agency in Atlanta, they're like number 6. And there's something to be said for having that many keywords, but you have to run a balance because no one actually converts on their website because it's so many words. It's so hard to read. It's very overwhelming. So a search engine likes it, but a person doesn't. The same goes for the job, career page on a website. You want to have words on there, but you need to have ways to not necessarily hide them. But if you can like do a drop down FAQ, that's my favorite way to add a lot of what we call SEO juice by having a lot of relevant keywords in the FAQs. So if you can have an FAQs for each job posting and then have all the jobs on one page, you're going to probably be getting a lot of traffic to your website for free that are fairly qualified candidates.
That's a great idea, and I didn't necessarily phrase it to people as FAQs, but basically, if you wrote the story at the top, you had a paragraph, you had an image, you had a little video, and my recommendation is where people sort of max out is about 500 words. So that's sort of the text. That's the story. Why do you want to work for us? Or why you should work, or taking your question, which I really love, is what are the consequences if you don't work for us? What are you going to miss out? To be able to use that. And then in the bottom is list all your, what are the responsibilities? And now you can put that. What are the skills that are required? So those could be all the FAQs. They're there. We're not telling you to get rid of them because they're still important. We're not telling people to hire people without responsibilities and without skills, but you got to get them engaged. You got to get them to want to work for you first, and then figure out, hey, am I a good fit?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the phrase, what's at risk if they don't work with you? That's something that we use in the StoryBrand framework. Basically, what we're trying to do in that moment is we're trying to paint a picture of success and also failure. So if you can identify what it's going to be like for your potential hire on the other side of like them actually working for you, and identify that as something that's really awesome, paint a really clear picture of that with pictures and words and all that jazz. And you can also mention, you don't need to overdo this, but what's at risk if they don't go with your company? Are they gonna, have poor managers? Are they gonna have a poor work-life balance? Are they not gonna be able to make an impact? I don't know. Obviously, you have to tweak some of those because you don't want to be like fear-mongering, but it's important.
I mean, you said this right in the beginning. It's understanding your market. I mean, it's understanding who your target is. So I can say, hey, I heard that all millennials are living in the basement of their parents, and I believe that. And therefore, we're going to offer them a way out. We're going to offer them $1 more than our competitor. That's not necessarily going to get them out. That may get a job, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a career. Maybe they want to get out. They want to go back to school. Maybe they have school loans. Maybe they want to, they're getting married. Maybe they want to move. Maybe they want to buy a house. Maybe they want to start a business. Understanding what ultimately what's their end game and how can you help them?
Yeah, I love that. You totally. We've paid off all of our student loan debt, but there was a lot of it. And man, I would have. My wife was more. We worked together for a little bit, and then we're like, nope, that's not the best thing for our marriage. So she went to go work for somewhere else. And if they would have said, hey, we're going to help pay off your student loan debt or like match your contribution to that, my goodness, I would be jazzed. So side note, as a millennial.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's job opportunity. It's, hey, we're gonna help you increase your skills, and pretty much accepting the fact that we know you may not be here working on this $10 an hour job or $12 an hour job for the rest of your life because you have higher ambitions, but we're going to help you achieve what your next goal is. And then maybe there is an opportunity here to work, and companies have some companies do it really, really well. But a lot of companies miss the boat. And as I always say, a lot of the things that I suggest on, certainly helping people improve their candidate experience, when they say, how do we reach those top people? Not necessarily just get more people to apply, but how do we get the people that have the skills, that have that emotional intelligence, or have emotional intelligence and the technical skills? How do we get them to want to work for us? And that's where the story. I mean, that's really where the story comes in. It's not a better job board. It's not like where do they hang out? They're not hanging out. They sort of got the pick of where they want to work. They're going to hang out in their current job until they find a better opportunity, and it's your job to create that better opportunity.
I had a role at a nonprofit, and what I thought would be a great idea was to retarget with ads that nonprofit, which is pretty awesome nonprofit, and retarget people with certain skill sets or interest on Facebook. So they liked the website, or they liked the social media, and they also went to the website, and they had photography skills or graphic design skills, and was able to get a bunch of candidates that way. So this is a unique idea to try.
Again, lots of ideas, and again, it's telling that story. So there was one thing, and I again, this resonated so well, and I'm a bigger fan of Jason Bourne than I am Star Wars, but I've seen all the Star Wars. But you give an example of that guide, and I think that told the story of what it was. That to me resonated. That and it fits in what we're talking about right now. Is if you're looking for a job, I want to guide you. I want to tell the story that guides you into that. Am I getting that right? Yes,
in a way. So what you're referring to is the classic story brand example of what we would call the guide and the story. So the 7-part framework of story brand is built on the principles that movie makers use. And that's why our brains so easily engage with the story brand messaging, is because our brains are trained to engage in story. And most of the time during our day, we're actually daydreaming unless we're engaged in a story. So this helps us lock in somebody's attention into what we're talking about. So in Haymitch from the Hunger Games, he's the guide in that story. He's helping Katniss Everdeen win the day and win the Hunger Games tournament and not die. In Star Wars, you've got Yoda and at some point Luke, who are both this guide character who have been there, done that, and can help the hero win the day. They've already gone through the trials. They're not struggling with the same problems that they struggle with. And they can come alongside them and very empathetically go, hey, I've been there. I hear you. Let me help you win the day here. So I feel like if employers can take that perspective, and honestly, I kind of like it as more of a humble perspective. We mentioned, hey, you're lucky you work for me. This is the opposite of that. This is, hey, what's important to you? Okay, well, cool. Let's help you achieve that. And I'm, Caffeine and Evan Knox is not perfect, but there's been multiple times where I've had potential hires or contractors who have decided to go, you know what, I don't have to make this all about caffeine right now. What's important to them? What's important to this intern right now or this contractor? And I probably helped 3 or 4 people get hired now with other places because I was not going to fit that need that they needed. What was the thing that was important to them? I wasn't going to be able to cater to that, but I knew someone who could. So yeah, I think that being the guide in the story is more fulfilling.
And again, I think that just sums up that message of not being the hero of the story and going back to what we talked about initially. Hey, we've got a great company and you should be honored. We're going to give you this place. We're going to give you that first place award, and you can show up and you're going to be special because we hired you. Not that we're going to make you special, that you have your own dreams and you are a special person and you deserve to be on this pedestal. No, it's we're going to put you on this pedestal, but we're going to take it away if you don't do a good job.
Yeah, we all need someone. It doesn't have to be a relationship like this, but my wife, for example, she will look at the copy on my website, my personal brand website, and she'll be like, "Oh, you sound kind of arrogant right here." She'll read it out loud to me, and I'll go, "Oh, that's so bad," and then I'll have to change it because I've made myself the hero of the story. Can't be having that.
Yeah. So you said something earlier, and again, because you've obviously hired people, and again, for a well, basically you're an older or you're a younger millennial, but
I am.
Mid 20s, I think, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yep.
But even talking about emotional intelligence, I mean, that's not something that people have thought before. Is that in order to be emotionally intelligent, you had to be have 30 years of job experience, and that's not the case. And at all. But a lot of people are saying, hey, we need to hire people that are emotionally intelligent. And my world, what I do, I mean, we're talking a lot about marketing and how companies can better attract good people. But what I'm talking, my day job, or where I really living is, we do pre-employment testing and leadership testing, and EQ is part of that. But I got to tell you is that EQ is pretty broad. I mean, for those who aren't familiar with emotional intelligence, it comes out to 4 aspects. One is, what is your self-awareness? And obviously you have a great deal of self-awareness and you're working on it all the time. So there's self-awareness, and then it's, how do you manage that self-aware? Hey, it's the old line is, yeah, I know I'm a little bit pushy, and I know, I'm a little bit brash, or I know I got a short fuse, but that's who I am. Okay, so good news is you got high self-awareness. Bad news is you have poor self-management. So emotional intelligence is, how do I manage both of those? And then the other part is how observant you are of other people, of your surroundings. Can I recognize what your needs are? And it's interesting because I didn't make that connection until this conversation, is that high emotional intelligence is really critical for a recruiter and for a business and for the marketing department, because you have to be aware of the other people. What are their emotions? What are their feelings like? What are they looking for? And then ultimately you have to learn how to manage those relationships. So, really important. It's not just about emotional intelligence. Is that, I've been coached and I've been mentored, and I got this I took this assessment and it said I had a 99 on self-awareness, and I've got, I'm pretty cool. I've learned to manage stress. Yeah, that's only half the story. It's what about all the people around you?
It's so funny you say that. I feel like I took a similar test. It was this, I saw this like from this book. This is Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
Oh yeah, Daniel Goleman. Yeah, he made it popular again.
Yeah. So I remember taking that test, and I scored. I mean, it's one of those things. Whenever you think you're good at something, you're not. You know what I mean? Like when you're like, oh, I'm really crushing it. You don't tell anybody that you think you are, because then you're really not self-aware. But I do tell like my mom or my wife sometimes. I'll be like, I got done with that test, for example, and I didn't tell anybody, but I told my wife, and I was like, look how self-aware I am. And she was like, rolled her eyes. So maybe I'm not that self-aware, but it was so funny.
Yeah. So, but so again, part of that is, as you said, that's something to look for, with people. But the other part is values. I mean, in order for that to work, is the person that's hiring them also has to have high emotional intelligence and be aware of what the other person wants. And a lot of that has to do with active listening. There's somebody I interviewed a couple months ago, a super good guy, is Australian, and he's got a program called Deep Listening.
Cool.
Again, it's like people just don't say, I think I need to have a listening course. I mean, despite the fact that people say you don't listen, you don't listen.
Sure.
But only 2% of the population has ever taken a listening course, and then it's sort of here's the things you need to do, and just because you shut up, just because you're not talking, doesn't mean you're listening. And there's a lot of people that say, well, count to 60. So if you're counting to 60 to give the other person an opportunity to talk, you're really not listening.
You're not listening, no.
Yeah, but that's sort of the process. I mean, active listening is truly is being able to focus on what you are saying at that moment, and understand it, and then make sure you understood it. So there's a whole process with that. So hiring people is definitely complicated, a little bit different than where we're headed. But that's also important to go back to the marketing. I mean, the storytelling. Is that's the message you want to go out, is that we do listen to what your needs are, and we can help you on your career path, and we can help you achieve what you need to achieve. It's not like, hey, we're going to give you enough money, so what you do with it is your thing. That's not a good message.
Right. You just reminded me, I guess not reminded me, but you made me think of something. So whenever we talk branding, there's personal branding, which I want to kind of table for a minute here, but there's also company branding. So whenever somebody, a customer in this case, has an experience with you, both with your website or online or through your packaging or on a phone call, all of that is branding. It's all how they perceive you or they feel about you. And it just occurred to me that there's also probably employer branding, and you can, hire the best recruiters, I'm sure, and you can get the best candidate, but the best candidate probably won't want to work at your place that long if they don't feel great about you as an employer. And so I think it's probably really critical that, we talk about self-awareness. That's probably the biggest key. That and empathy has been, when I, work for other people, it's been my favorite part.
And people are throwing them out as buzzwords, but no, absolutely. That's what we've been talking about. And again, people going up and looking on Glassdoor and Indeed and Google. And, that's again, going back to what the cycle used to be. The cycle used to be that I'm looking for a job, and then they submit the application. And that was the commitment. There had to be a commitment early on. And now with digital, with the Indeeds and the job boards of the year, is that the commitment to applying for a job doesn't have to be until after they apply. Because I can go up and say, I'm having a crappy day. I'm just going to click on Indeed, and it's going to send out an application to 100 different companies at once. And, I'll see if anybody calls me back. And then if they call me back, they go, do I want to pick up the phone? Do I actually want to make that call? Now I'll look and go, I don't remember applying to that company, but I go up and I look at it, and they go, they got 2 stars on Glassdoor. Nah, I don't think so. And then the jar says, we call these people and they don't respond to us. Well, one of my questions is, what's your employer brand look like? What's that brand? What's the reviews look like? If people aren't responding to you after they applied, why? And one is it's because it's too easy. But if they change their then it's a process issue. But again, if there's stories, if they don't have a good story to tell, then that's a concern. And people aren't. People maybe today, with 44 million people unemployed, people need a paycheck. Unemployment's going to run out at some point. Sure, people will work for anybody, but they're not going to stay there. That's not the desirable. That's not necessarily the desired employee. But there's there's a lot of good talent out there now. Some are on that. Yeah. Some are dissatisfied with the way their company is treating them, or treating things, or they're unsure what the future is going to be at that company, and they're looking. So the employee brand is just critically important. But you're dead on. I mean, the employer story is super important. And companies, just the good news is, for everybody listening, it's like, wow, this sounds like a lot of work. I can tell you right now, it does take work. It takes focus. It will take maybe a little bit of money. Maybe you need to work with somebody like Evan to help put that picture together to get that story told. But the reality is, the bar is so low. The bar is really, really low. For corporate brands, it may be, that's a tough nut to crack. But small, medium-sized businesses have not focused on their employment brand, or even their company brand, for a long time. So we're kind of getting it to the end of here. We got about 40 minutes into it. What are what's the final message? How can people get in touch with you, Evan?
Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier, but I've got a free guide on my website, how to build a winning sales funnel. A lot of that applies to customer, but you could very much just replace customer and put employee on there. So if you do want to use that worksheet, and then once you get into that email sequence, you'll also get access to that webinar that Ira mentioned, which is, it's pretty great. And I will say, if you just want to learn about StoryBrand and you're like, I don't want to work with them, but I want to learn about StoryBrand, do check out storybrand.com. Big fans of them. And they'll actually teach you the framework yourself so that you can use it.
Yeah. And your website's Caffeine Marketing. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you want to work with my agency, go to caffeine.marketing, no.com. And if you just want to connect with me, you can go to evanknox.com.
So I'm just going to put these up here for everybody, and then it'll be in the video as well. If I can spell. Yeah, let me see if we can show it. That's it, right?
That's it. Great.
And then we'll do the other one. There, it's just evanknox.com, right?
Yep. That's it.
Perfect. Hey, Evan, I really appreciate it. It was a fun conversation, and hey, thanks for. I appreciate one of the values of LinkedIn. I mean, you meet, we connected. I'm not sure we would have done that otherwise, or how our paths crossed, but we did it. And I'm sharing your message, but again, in the story brands as well. But it's a powerful story. I love the model. Thanks for introducing that to me. And I wish you the best of luck, and enjoy the weekend, and continued success.
All right, will do. Thanks, Ira. Appreciate you having me.
And for everyone else, remember, let me just throw these things up real quickly here. We've got our webinar next week, next Thursday. If you connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter, that's probably the two biggest places you'll get that. It's free. It's a link. 11 o'clock a.m. It's 30 minutes. And we're going to talk about the COVID impact on job listings and how you can use that to your advantage. And the following Thursday, we've got the second in our series of Future of Employment with Ed Gordon, Dr. Ed Gordon, and the topics, the failure of current talent strategies. Again, that is free as well. This one you do need to pre-register for. The other one, well, actually, both of them you need to pre-register for. So you have the login information. But again, if you follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, you'll get that information, and appreciate it. So again, thanks, Evan. Thanks everybody who is listening now and in the future. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.